Welcome to episode 5 as we are closing out our first month of the Your Neurodiverse Relationship podcast. I am so happy to report that we have had such a successful launch of the podcast, and I'm so glad that so many of you are benefiting and are enjoying this podcast. As of today, as of right now, between all the platforms where the podcast is broadcasting and our YouTube channel, we've had over 700 downloads and views, and I've had such amazing feedback. People are telling me that they're listening, they're watching, and they are really enjoying this podcast. So those of you who have already been guests, thank you for sharing your stories. And I just want to remind you that this is your neurodiverse relationship podcast, and I want you to join me and talk to me. So if you're enjoying this and you're interested in sharing your own story, please schedule a time to talk to me. And you can do this by checking the description, and there's a link there where you can submit a guest request, and my assistant will reach out to you and we'll schedule a time for you to talk to me, and we'll share your story with the world. Some of the people that you've been listening to have been clients of mine already, but that's not a requirement at all. And I'd love to chat with you, even if you just want to share your story with us. So today I'm going to replay actually an interview I did with some clients of mine, Matt and Jen. And this has been on YouTube, but there are lots of you who never saw that interview. And so I'm going to replay that for you today. And so we're going to break this into 2 different episodes because it's kind of a long interview. And when they first came to me, they were really struggling, considering divorce. And so they have really, really turned their relationship around, and they talk about where they were when they first came. And so many of you are going to relate to their story. And then in part 2, which is going to air in 2 weeks, they're going to talk about the tools and strategies that they continue to use and how their relationship is really working. And it's just going to be so encouraging for all of you, because a lot of you are going to really recognize yourselves in their story. And I think you're going to hear a lot of inspiration and hope in what they have to say. Okay, so let's just start. I'm so excited to talk to you guys. It's been, I think we said about a year since I worked with you guys, and you went through my private intensive, but then also the communication program, which is now called Crack the Communication Code. Let me show everybody. That's the link to it. So I asked Matt and Jen to come chat with me about their journey and to just talk a bit about where they were when they first came to me and what that was like going through that. The private intensive I can't remember if you guys did 8 weeks or 3 months, but some people most people start at 8 weeks now, and then we add on a month or so if they need that. But anyway, so let's just start with what brought you guys to me. Do you remember how you even found me?
I found you.
You did.
I found you. Yes. I was doing all the research at the time, trying to fix everything, and thankfully, I found you.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure we did it twice, didn't we?
Yeah, we did it twice.
We did it twice.
Yeah, I remember that now. You did. You went through the intensive twice. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about what it was. Jen, you said you were trying to fix the problems. What is it that, if you think back, what was going on, and what were you looking for? I mean, what was going on that prompted you to try to figure out and fix it?
Well, during that time, Matt and I had, both gone through some significant loss. He lost his grandfather, and I lost my mom. And so it was hard for both of us, and we were trying to communicate to each other in our own ways, and it wasn't working because he wasn't seeing my view and I wasn't seeing his view. And so we were going through a lot at the time. And I think we both had, we had what we thought what a perfect marriage would look like. We both wanted that. We both desperately wanted it. We both came from not the greatest upbringings, not terrible, but not the greatest. And we both didn't want that. So we were both trying to avoid that. But with that said, I had my things that I needed to work on, but I didn't know it. And so with the passing of our people, like we were at that point, you know, it was our breaking point basically, to where we were trying so hard at this and it wasn't working, and we were both exhausted and tired. So that's when I reached out to you, because I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And unfortunately, divorce, it came to mind, but I didn't want a divorce. I wanted it to stop. I wanted this cycle to stop. And I never once wanted to leave him because he's my best friend. But I didn't know what to do. You know, I knew there were issues, but I just didn't know what to do.
I want to, before I give you a chance to kind of add to that, Matt, I want to just mention that, you know, you said you both had been through some pretty major losses and you were really struggling to understand each other. And that's something that I see quite a bit, where couples can be sort of trucking along and maybe struggling a bit. But then when something big happens like that, then there are just no tools there to and then the misunderstandings just skyrocket, and that's when it just really starts to unravel. So anyway, let me turn that over to you, Matt. What do you remember about that time period and how this all, how you when you got to me, where you were?
Yeah, right. So I think you kind of touched on it there too, was there were all sorts of things still going on, like issues that would be, not talked about. I mean, she would discuss them. Talking wasn't really part of the thing, but like the same issues would come up over and over again. And I would think that they would be handled and then come up again, which I just thought was part of the relationship, up until, like she said, my grandfather and her mom passed. And then it seemed like there was no, I guess, resolving any of it, even for a short period of time. So it just got to the point to where we were both very miserable, probably. Yeah,
we were sad and miserable and exhausted.
Yeah, exhausted. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You said that talking wasn't really a thing. So can you tell me more? What do you mean by that? When you said, you know, things would come up, but talking about it wasn't really a thing.
Well, so from my point of view during that time, it was the thing, whatever it was, would be, she would bring it up. She would explain, you know, how she felt and what was going on. And I would try to resolve that. And in my mind, that was, hey, let's resolve it. Let's fix it. Be done with it. And I would have thought that would have, like, after me fixing it, we're done. Why talk about it again? And then it would come up again.
Right.
Because it wasn't really resolved.
You know what the funny thing is, if you don't mind me bumping in?
Oh, yeah.
I actually wrote this down. What we no longer do, what we were doing at that point in time. We no longer try and control or want each other to conform to each other's views, but we accept and try to seek understanding. We now have the freedom to be just us, two individuals with two different views. And because of that, we have, love and more respect for each other. So beforehand, I was trying to have him conform into the way I feel, and he was trying to do the same. He's like, this is all finished. This is done. But I'm like, no, it's not. We got to continue. And we were just continuously trying to control each other and how we view life. And it wasn't working.
You know, and that is such a huge thing that people do. And we go into our relationship, and then that whole communication piece. Let's start with, you know, what you bring to it. And you mentioned your past, your childhood, and Jen, you said something about expectations. And that's, you know, we bring into our relationship what we expect from our partner, what we expect from ourselves, how we're going to show up and how we're going to do things, how we're going to do life, how we're going to communicate. And then when that starts to fall apart, what you just said, we're like, we go into like convincing mode, and well, you need to see how good what what the way I'm doing this is what makes sense. This makes sense, and you need to understand, or you need to understand me and why I'm so we just, and then we end up in that boxing ring, where we're opponents instead of partners. And that's such a common thing in all relationships, not just neurodiverse. That's a dynamic that happens when people start hitting those differences. But what you just said is so key. When you start to realize, okay, I am me, you are you, and it's not it's not for me to convince you to be more like me, but to see you, know you, and for you to see me and know me, and then accept and acknowledge that we're not going to be the same. And then that's kind of where the deal breakers come in, that 2 or 10 scale, where you figure out what's really important here versus what can we let go. Yeah. So before we go into kind of what, some of the, how what you remember going through the program, that like the big moments that were like, let's talk a little bit about neurodiversity and how that first kind of became, made it to your radar, when you're like, wait a minute, we're dealing with some neurodiversity here. What prompted that?
So prior to you, we had reached out to a therapist, just a regular therapist.
No, she was a neurodiverse therapist.
Was she?
Yeah,
okay.
She was.
Well, may have been the reason.
I reached out to her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we had tried before you.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work out. But part of what she had suggested was me looking into Asperger's and whether that was something that might have fit me and how I so basically just if it fit me. I then did that research. I contacted my mother, kind of talked through some things about my earlier childhood where I had been diagnosed ADHD, which I wasn't aware of. She didn't relay that information to me. I guess it wasn't a big deal. I was a functioning adult. What did it matter? But yeah, between that and kind of her explaining more about how I acted then and how I act and do things now, it really just fit. So that's how I came about it.
So it was a professional that kind of tipped you off in the beginning. So what are some of the traits and characteristics that resonated with you, Matt?
So very black and white, which I know is kind of can be a dude thing, but even when compared to the other guys at the shop that I work at, it's just very logical for me. And emotion is not there at all sometimes. And there were some tests that I think you had pointed us to for kind of evaluating that on a numerical scale, and it was very low, if not altogether not there. So
the emotion, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably a big one. A lot of the other things are probably ADHD, a little OCD, but just all together adding up to, I'm probably have Asperger's. So
yeah. So a lot of folks do get that ADHD diagnosis first, and so it oftentimes it's because providers don't recognize really high functioning autism.
Yeah. And I think, I'm 32. So during that point in time, it wasn't really, even getting ADHD was probably new to them. So
kind of on the leading edge of this whole, and a lot of folks consider ADHD part of the term neurodiverse. And I wouldn't really disagree with that. It's kind of like, I know I've probably told you guys, there's the sensory processing issues that we see oftentimes, well, really all the time, there's some degree of sensory processing in autism, but you can have sensory processing issues and not be autistic. The same with ADHD. We pretty much, the concentration and focus and the executive functioning difficulties that we see in ADHD. We absolutely see that in Asperger's and autism spectrum, but you can have those in ADHD without being on the spectrum. So
yeah, and I forgot about the sensory processing. I mean, actually, I think during one of our sessions with you, it was, she had like sprayed me with some water just because she was playing, and it like set me off. I got upset, and yeah, that wasn't a fun time, but kind of brought it to light that yeah, that was a thing. And I mean, I don't particularly like light touch, so which is good to know, because
it's so good to know.
It lets her know that I'm not trying to push her away when she's just trying to,
Effective work on your neurodiverse relationship can't start with pointing at any one person as the problem. Instead, if you really want to transform your communication and create the relationship fulfillment that you really deserve, you have to find out how different you are from one another, not how any one partner is different from the world. So in my comprehensive relationship evaluation, I actually assess both partners, and we look at traits of autism, executive functioning, sensory processing, and your overall relationship health. So take your first step to get major relationship insight and figure out where to go from here. You can book your consultation with me today. The link is in the description. Yeah, I remember you all, there was a story about laying in the grass. In the backyard. Do you guys mind sharing that? You remember Jen talking about?
I really enjoy being outside and being in the outdoors and his presence. And so just like, I asked him, I was like, can we just go out and sit and like be together? And I guess that's when it was brought to light that it's uncomfortable for him, but I didn't know it at the time. So of course I took it as if he doesn't want to spend time with us.
Yeah, I think we actually did go try. I mean, and we just sat. We didn't have blankets or anything, right? Because it was impromptu. So yeah, we just kind of went out and sat in the grass, which then I moved and was jittery the whole entire time.
And then you went inside.
Yeah, just very quickly got up and left. So.
And when you don't know, and when he doesn't know, how is he supposed to communicate that, and so.
Well, and then, and so, yes, so this is where that interpretation of meaning really causes so much distress and misunderstanding and confusion in relationships, because for you, Jen, he's just leaving and not wanting to hang out with you, and you're not realizing that the feel of the grass to Matt is really, really uncomfortable. And Matt, on your side of it, it's one of those things that if you don't, your frame of reference is that this is uncomfortable. And to you, it's surely everybody feels this too. It's like, we all just kind of assume that other people feel and experience the same thing we do. So why would you need to communicate that? Maybe Jen can just, maybe, I don't know why Jen doesn't like to feel this because it's horrible, but I'm not, so we don't even know to say it out loud to our partner that this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And there was another story I remember where it came up that it was also uncomfortable, Matt, because of the sensory discomfort you have, for you to even see your daughter be messy. And there was a story, I think, when she was playing in the creek, and that was really uncomfortable for you.
There were a lot of things going on with that particular one. Do you want to, or you want me?
You had.
Okay. So we went out with some friends. They were doing a barbecue next to the river, but it was a rainy day. So I brought extra clothes. I brought rain gear.
So prepared.
And everything with us, because I knew what was going to happen, and I knew it was cold there as well. But Jen still wanted to go swimming with Sky, so they brought their swimsuits. That was not something I was going to do. So anyway, they did. They went. They swam, and coming back, obviously very muddy. It was raining, and everything was dirty. So then Sky and Jen were dirty. And Sky was at that point upset because she was cold and,
Yeah.
and wet. So getting her changed, but during that process of getting her changed, and not me, I wasn't touching her. In the process of Jen changing Sky, in the truck got dirty. Some of the clean clothes were again messied. Messied, is that even a word? We're messed up and we're wet. So in just the whole experience of her being muddy, the truck now being muddy, her being upset, Jen now getting upset because I'm frustrated at the whole situation. Yeah, not a fun thing. And then, obviously that was upsetting her as well because I was being, can I say I was being a dick?
You just did. It's fine.
I mean, you have the ability to cut that out if you need to, but yeah, I was being,
you just shut down.
Yeah.
That's whenever he has a moment like where he's overwhelmed, he just shuts down. It's not necessarily, he has a little bit of dude, but he shut down. Understandably so.
What do you remember? Yeah, Jen, what do you remember about that experience from your perspective?
From my perspective, okay, so I love to live. I love to experience life. And we go down there. It's cold, a little bit cold, right? But it's beautiful. And it smells great. Like all of my senses are just enjoying this moment. And swimming in the creek when it's cold, heck yes, why not? You don't experience that all the time. And it was stunning. There was fog everywhere, and Sky wanted to do it. So I wanted her to experience it from my perspective. It's beautiful. Yes, a little cold. Yes, you're getting muddy, but it's worth it. So we go down to the water, and Sky's giggling. She's loving every moment of it. And even in the water, even though it's cold, she loves it, and it's gorgeous. But when we were going back to it, poor thing fell in the mud, and that's when it went south quick. She didn't like the mud on her body like that. So yes, there was a lot, and I understand his perspective, especially now, but going into it, I'm just let's live, let's experience life together and make these memories. But yeah, his truck got a little dirty. So
yeah. And so in that moment, you said he shut down. What did that look like?
He literally just went into the truck and shut the door and was just no longer present.
Yep.
And just done.
Yeah, I had to step away.
Yeah.
And even when I got over that, and it took a little bit, maybe 30 minutes or so, I think I listened to music in the truck. But even after I got done with that and came back out, I still wasn't fully there as I had been prior to. Probably a little bit of guilty there, but I mean, we got over it.
Yeah, we did.
We got over it. We learned.
Yes, we did.
But yeah, I mean, so
what I'm trying. I think you guys were working with me when that happened, or was that before?
I think so, actually. Yeah.
I think you were working with me, and I remember that being something you brought in. And so, what was it that was different for you then? How would you have interpreted that before, Jen, and Matt, you too? Mm-hmm. And then, what do you remember about how we talked you through that?
So the way I what I did was I got a little huffy puffy ever so slightly and hurt, but beforehand I think I would have cried. It would have hurt.
What would the meaning have been to you?
Maybe.
And I love the truck more than you.
Yes, yes, exactly. Things were, the cleanliness of it all was more important than the experience of our daughter. I didn't, and I guess myself too, but I was really wanting to do all of this for her because also I was enjoying it too, but that was more important than that.
Yeah. And what was the meaning that you ended up with?
Oh, after like speaking to you, I got a better perspective of his side of everything, and it wasn't just that. It was there's his side of it means just as much as my side of it. Like we were both going through this situation, and it wasn't just my perspective.
Did it feel personal still?
During it, not as much,
Mm-hmm.
because we were going through, we were with you at the time, so not
I think
as
it was
much.
still kind of early on even.
It was
So, I mean, we were still very much
new-
learning and
new to it.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing in the beginning, especially when people are still learning. I tell folks, look, you're still going to do this. This is still going to happen. The same dynamics, the same meanings, the same misunderstandings are going to happen. But what you can do now is you're starting to raise that awareness, and after the fact, you can go back and say, "Oh, I see what happened there."
We got really good at that.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously we still mess up and things still happen, and
Not as
in the
often.
moment is still in the moment. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to think it all through there, but I mean, we don't blow up anymore.
It's straight to like, what did you mean
Yeah.
when you said this?
Clarification.
And then the solution. How can we fix this?
Yeah, so that was kind of one of my next, you guys are just leading right into one of my next things I wanted to ask is, what are some of the new tools? So let's talk about that some more and expand on that a little bit and tell people what kind of things, come up, and then what tools are you using? How are you, what's different now about how you interact when something comes up between you?
We start with kindness.
And we're going to end there for today's episode. To hear the rest of my chat with Matt and Jen, tune in 2 weeks from today. Also, remember that this podcast is for you, and I would like to talk to you about your own experiences in your neurodiverse relationships. To be a guest on the show, check the podcast description for a link to submit your guest request. Let's talk soon. Until next time.